The protagonist was astonished by his sister's return home, especially since she arrived not alone, but accompanied by her young suitor. The girl introduced her beloved to her brother with a smile, her fascination with him plainly visible. Liu Ye revealed that he was Zinan's partner, expressing his delight at meeting her closest relative. Later, the group of young people decided to enjoy some tea and converse, leaving Zinan momentarily alone with his sister's beloved. Understandably, he was shocked by the sudden encounter under such a personal pretext. Only after the girl left the company of the men did the brunette warmly greet the protagonist as someone he had previously met. In the next moment, he inquired whether the brunette had missed him, to which the young man, feeling uneasy in Liu Ye's presence, of course did not respond. 3 years earlier, thanks to the advice of his best friend, the protagonist had ventured into a nightclub dressed in women's attire. He was nervous, but the girl assured him of the necessity to proceed. Despite his fear of being exposed, she was convinced otherwise, persuading him that in the nightclub's dim light, Zinan looked convincingly like a real girl, strikingly similar to his twin sister, thus he should face no problems. After calming the brunette somewhat, the friend left his company, urging him to stay at the bar to possibly meet someone and thus confirm whether he was attracted to men. After a while, feeling somewhat lost, the protagonist was approached by another clubgoer who suggested they leave the venue for a quieter, more secluded spot. Naturally, this man turned out to be none other than Liu Ye. The charming brunette managed to win over Zinan, and they left together. In that moment, the young man did not yet realize that this new acquaintance would become his first love. Hours before venturing into the establishment, the protagonist was adorned and dressed in women's attire by his best friend. Even then, he wondered if his identity would be exposed by others. The girl was confident that such a thing would not happen as, thanks to a wig, he looked exactly like his twin sister. Thus, she called her friend beautiful, trying to instill confidence before heading to the nightclub. Zinan doubted the truth of others' words, but was eager to confirm his own non-traditional orientation. For this, it was necessary for him to dress as a woman and meet another man. After meeting Liu Ye, the brunette did not just decide to leave with him for another venue, but went straight to a hotel to spend the night together. While the man was in the shower, the brunette puzzled over his own extremely risky actions, for he had not disclosed his gender to the brunette. Reflecting on this, Zinan tried to discreetly leave the hotel room to end the encounter. Unfortunately, he failed, as Liu Ye emerged from the shower just as he was about to leave, greatly displeasing him. Therefore, he attempted to question the protagonist about it, clearly expecting to hear a valid reason to leave. Initially, Zinan hesitated, as if trying to deny his earlier escape attempt, but soon it was clear he was not believed. When the man asked why the brunette had come to the hotel with him if he did not wish to spend the night together, the young man realized he needed to reveal his secret. Although he felt very awkward in front of the extremely attractive brunette, he decided to tell the truth about his gender. Removing his wig, the protagonist informed him of his identity, obviously expecting negative emotions from his companion in response. To Zinan's great surprise, his companion revealed that he had initially known the gender of the person he was interested in, and therefore, there was no problem. The young man was shocked by the information heard, as he did not understand the reasons why they had gone to the hotel together earlier. Mistakenly, he thought the brunette had decided to mock him. In a moment, it turned out that this was not the case at all. Rather, Liu Ye was interested in the brunette's personality precisely because he had such a secret. He honestly told the protagonist about this, and then confessed his own non-traditional orientation. This news completely astonished Zinan, but the man explained that he had invited him to spend time together only because he wanted to help determine his personal preferences and finally understand who he was. Without waiting for a reaction to this information, the brunette embraced the young man. Only after that did he again offer the brunette to continue the evening, as they had originally planned. The two young men spent the night together as partners. It was the protagonist's first such experience, but he had no regrets. In the morning, the brunette woke up before the man and hurried to quietly dress and leave the hotel room before anyone could interfere. As a farewell, the young man decided to kiss the sleeping Liu Ye. It might have seemed to an outsider that Zinan was reluctant to leave, but felt compelled to do so. Soon after, the protagonist arrived at his training session, where he was met by his best friend, her face full of perplexity. The previous evening, the brunette had vanished from the venue without warning, causing the girl great concern. Moreover, he had turned off his phone, making it impossible to contact him. Noticing Shishi's excessive anxiety, the young man chose not to disclose the details of what had happened the previous night. Instead, Zinan lied, claiming he had simply become very frightened and fled home from the nightclub prematurely. Surprisingly, the friend, who knew of her companion's timidity, easily believed what she heard. Soon, she was distracted by news on social media. According to the information, the popular internet star, Liu Ye, had decided to retire, and someone else would take his place. As soon as the protagonist paid attention to the man the girl was discussing, he immediately recognized him as his companion from the night before. While his friend lamented how sad this news was, the brunette tried to comprehend the fact that he had spent the night with a well-known public figure. In that moment, Zinan forever remembered the brunette with whom he had shared his first personal experience. Moreover, he became extremely interested in his life and career, but as Liu Ye had retired, there was less and less news about him, making it harder to gather information. Despite the difficulties in obtaining it, the protagonist consciously spent more and more time and effort searching. Without realizing it, the brunette had fallen in love with the man with whom he had spent just one night. Even a year later, his feelings had not faded. So when he noticed a poster with the brunette's image on the street, he was immensely happy. Now, sitting at a tea party with Liu Ye, who was the new boyfriend of his older sister, Zinan felt very uncomfortable. Although he tried to smile at his sister in the moment, he mentally tried to understand why the brunette had started a relationship with Zinan if he had previously assured that he was of a non-traditional orientation. Meanwhile, the man himself behaved very kindly and considerately towards the girl, as if he was genuinely interested in a partnership with her, and even felt affection. Remembering some details of his first encounter with his beloved, the protagonist was once again convinced that Liu Ye could not be attracted to women. Reflecting on the current events, the young man tried to discern whether the man had previously lied to him about his orientation or, conversely, had changed over time. Observing how the brunette behaved so graciously towards Zinan, the protagonist could not be certain of the sincerity of his actions. Consequently, he began to suspect that Liu Ye was acting deliberately, merely to display his affections for the girl in front of him. Only by looking into the eyes of his former lover did the main character guess that he had something serious in mind. Unexpectedly, at that moment, the former one-night partner suddenly expressed his desire to stay at the Q siblings' house until morning. Clearly, Zinan hurried to forbid such a thing as soon as possible. He stated that he did not wish to host the unexpected guest overnight. With such a sudden and blunt refusal, the young man greatly surprised his older sister, who had never before seen such emotions from a relative. Without hesitation, the girl apologized to her beloved. She even tried to explain the strange behavior of the brunette as excessive nervousness upon meeting her suitor. The man understood the situation, albeit guessing why the young man was truly reacting this way. The protagonist, evidently feeling even more uncomfortable due to his sister's justifications, felt ashamed as she not only made him feel embarrassed, but also, contrary to all his prohibitions, allowed the guest to stay the night. Later, Zinan could not sleep, deeply troubled by the unfolding events. He realized that the two young people were spending the night together in one bedroom, thus having the opportunity to engage in a personal process with each other. For this reason, the young man attempted to eavesdrop on what was happening in the adjacent room, which belonged to his sister, through the wall of his own bedroom. Since the protagonist could not discern any suspicious or ambiguous sounds, he wondered if the brunette would be as courteous and gentle with Zinan as he had been with him 3 years ago in the hotel. Reflecting on this, Zinan felt extremely ashamed and uncomfortable, as it seemed he recalled details of his nighttime partnership with the man. Nonetheless, his primary concern was, of course, for his sister. Unexpectedly, while he was trying to listen through the wall, someone knocked on his door. It was Liu Ye himself, who was in quite a pleasant mood. He had come to the protagonist's bedroom to ask for a favor, but first tried to apologize for his unexpected visit earlier. The brunette pretended to accept the other's repentance for his persistent desire to stay the night, while mentally noting that the man was in his home attire. Only afterward did the brunette confess that he had initially come to the young man's room merely to borrow some items. More precisely, Liu Ye wanted to borrow a personal protection device from the protagonist. It was quite natural that what he heard shocked the young man, confirming all his anxieties and fears just moments before. Therefore, in the next instant, he grabbed the brunette by the collar of his shirt and commanded him not to touch his older sister that night. It seemed that this was precisely the reaction Zinan's former lover had anticipated. Even as the young man grew angry and began to threaten, he remained calm and even smiled. The brunette, far from planning to stop, declared that he would tell his relative the truth about the man's orientation if he did not comply with the conditions. Liu Ye knew that the young man himself was afraid to confess his secret to his sister, and thus would not jeopardize himself by revealing their shared night earlier. Hearing such a statement from his former one-night partner, the main character froze in place with evident bewilderment. He understood perfectly well that his counterpart was right, but what to do next was unknown to him. Unexpectedly, the girl herself intervened in the conversation, completely unaware of what the two young men could have been discussing for so long. It turned out that the brunette had initially gone to the young man's room to borrow a pillow for sleeping, not something indecent. Only at that moment did it become apparent that Liu Ye had intentionally decided to mock the anxious Zinan. For right after, he requested what he had actually come for. Fortunately, the girl prevented the men from arguing any further, and after apologizing to her brother, she suggested they go to sleep. Before saying goodnight, she told her boyfriend that her parents had not been very imaginative, and therefore had given the twins extremely similar names. The brunette showed interest in this information, and afterward, the young couple went to another room to sleep. When the main character was finally alone, he managed to lie down to rest as he had planned. In that moment, he reflected on how he had not even dreamed of encountering his beloved from the past again. Moreover, he felt bewilderment and discomfort from having such a thorough acquaintance with him under these circumstances. Meanwhile, the two young people went to sleep together, embracing each other. When the man thought the girl had fallen asleep, he tried to verify this by calling her name. Naturally, she did not respond, thus indicating that she was asleep. As soon as the brunette was convinced of this, he immediately stopped embracing her and even turned away from Zinan. In the next moment, with a smile on his face, he whispered the main character's name, thereby wishing him a good night. Surprisingly, the girl had not been asleep all this time, but was only pretending. Therefore, when her partner uttered such strange wishes, she heard everything and was very surprised. The following morning, when Zinan awoke and entered the kitchen, his elder sister had already prepared breakfast for everyone and was hurriedly inviting them to eat. The protagonist felt awkward at the thought of having to sit at the same table with the man. Yet it seemed that the man, in contrast, was very pleased with the situation. For a moment, the young man even managed to forget the presence of the guest in his home, but upon seeing him in the kitchen and remembering, he became greatly upset. During the meal, while Zinan served a light breakfast, she noticed her relative's dejected state and hastened to inform everyone that the man was planning to leave soon. Despite what seemed like sad news for the girl, the brunette was relieved to hear it, and thus did not even wish to bid Liu Ye a proper farewell. His behavior appeared extremely rude and odd to his relative, prompting her to apologize to her young man on his behalf. The man, once again understanding the situation, even personally justified the protagonist's behavior, suggesting that he simply did not appreciate unexpected guests. Meanwhile, under the table, the brunette boldly took Zinan's hand, shocking him thoroughly for the morning. Disturbed by the former one-night partner's overly bold behavior, the brunette became flustered and announced that he no longer intended to continue with the meal. Though he had hardly eaten anything, he hurriedly left the kitchen and the company of the two young people, justifying it by saying he had earlier promised to call a friend. He decided to take his breakfast with him, rudely bidding farewell to the guest who was planning to leave anyway. The man ignored the slight, and after kissing his so-called girlfriend on the forehead, promised to contact her in the evening. Only when Liu Ye exited the apartment did he turn on his phone for the first time in a long while. He immediately began receiving dozens of notifications from friends, acquaintances, and contacts asking about his whereabouts and why he hadn't responded on social media. Particularly, a restless young man named Yi Ye was most curious about the happenings. He wanted to know all the details of the man's life and demanded that he call him as soon as his phone was turned on. Nevertheless, the brunette hadn't even finished reading all the messages when his friend personally reached out to him. Now, he began to ask all the same questions directly rather than through messages. Although Liu Ye confessed that he had been visiting his girlfriend, the blonde naturally did not believe this, as he had long been aware of his orientation. Nonetheless, the man insisted on the truthfulness of his words, leading Yi Ye to doubt the accuracy of the information he had. Without much thought, he declared the need for an urgent in-person meeting with his friend. Despite his interlocutor's sincere desire, the brunette insisted that such a meeting would be quite problematic, since he was a highly recognizable public figure. Moreover, Liu Ye was convinced that his friend should not interfere in his personal affairs, though it was clear his friend thought otherwise. Abruptly ending the phone call, Yi Ye instructed his driver to take him to a particular studio where the man worked, despite having completely different plans for the day. Evidently, he was very upset by his friend's antics, as they forced him to change his schedule and arrange an urgent meeting. Soon, Yi Ye arrived at the main building of the agency where the brunette was currently located. Although his driver warned him that entering the premises might expose him to reporters who could spread rumors, The popular individual was determined. For this reason, the blonde declared that having news about him was better than none at all, and discreetly made his way into the agency. Meanwhile, in the lounge, Liu Ye sat apart from the others, responding reluctantly even when approached for conversation. He spent much of his time examining a woman's earring. When a passing woman noticed and inquired about it, the brunette remembered that the protagonist had worn this ornament during their first night together in the hotel. But of course, he did not share this with anyone aloud. Nonetheless, his company eventually guessed that he was missing someone, and so they decided to tease him about it. Shortly after, the young people left the room to get drinks at a cafe. This was the moment Yi had been waiting for. As soon as Liu Ye was alone, his friend entered the room to finally talk face to face. Although he had been advised earlier that it was better not to meet, he chose to do so on his own terms. Naturally, the man was surprised by the unexpected encounter with his acquaintance and thus asked why he had come. Of course, the popular personality was extremely interested in the news that the brunette was now in a romantic relationship with a woman, which was quite uncharacteristic of him. Despite his friend's objections, the man continued to insist that this information was true and, moreover, asked not to interfere in his personal life. Nevertheless, Yi was resolute and stated quite bluntly that he would act as he saw fit. He was deeply concerned about the perceived injustice between them personally, as the brunette had assured him that he had not been in a relationship with anyone for 3 years and did not plan to do so. Furthermore, despite all the blonde's efforts to win the man's love, he remained unyielding. After the incident that occurred 3 years ago, he knew that Liu Ye could not easily fall in love with anyone. Now, learning such news, the friend was naturally upset. Yi felt true despair, for if his rival for the brunette's romantic affections had been another man, he might have been able to compete. But in the case of a woman, it was impossible. Noticing that the well-known person was now significantly saddened because of him personally, the man quickly sought to apologize. Liu Ye apologized for his inability to reciprocate the deep feelings of a close friend. Moreover, he insisted that it would be better for both of them to forget what had transpired between them in the past. The blonde sincerely confessed that he had tried to do so several times, yet his emotional pain was so profound that he could not let go of his infatuation and lingering resentment. Unable to reach a resolution to their problem, the two young men ended their conversation. More precisely, Yi simply left the company of the man he loved. Mentally, he resolved to gather information about the man's mysterious lover to understand why he was in a relationship with her, convinced that it was not a matter of ordinary love. As soon as his friend left the room, Zinan sent a message to the brunette, expressing her care by wishing him luck at work. Though her text might have seemed friendly and sweet, it did not please the man. Rather, it had the opposite effect. Consequently, he began to compose a reply indicating his desire to break up with her. Liu Ye realized that he wanted to move past his history and live on, but it was not so simple, as the possibility of attaining what he truly desired seemed all too real. Just as he was about to send the message to Zinan, she suddenly invited him to join her and her brother for a picnic over the weekend. This invitation made the man hesitate. Ultimately, he recognized that the night he had spent in the hotel with the protagonist was not special to him, nor was the brunette himself. However, memories of that night had haunted him for 3 years. During this time, the brunette inadvertently reflected on the details of their intimate encounter and the physical characteristics of his one-night partner. Wherever he was and whatever he was doing, he could not stop recalling and thinking about Zinan. That's why in the past, even when he learned about his friend's feelings, which had been growing for some time, he was unable to reciprocate them. Over time, all the usual activities no longer seemed as important to him as before, and life itself had lost all meaning. Only then did he realize that he had fallen hopelessly in love with the unknown young man with whom he had spent just one night. When he finally came to terms with the situation and accepted that finding his beloved would be impossible, he unexpectedly spotted him in the subway. With just one glance at the brunette, he immediately recognized him and was once again overwhelmed with emotion toward him. He felt the longing he had harbored all this time and the desire to speak to the protagonist. However, he was unable to do so as the metro train departed just as he was admiring the person he had longed to see again. It was then that the brunette realized he wanted to become someone significant in the life of the young man he had been in love with for 3 years. Therefore, when Zinan decided to introduce her boyfriend to her younger twin brother, he was visibly nervous, knowing he had waited too long for this meeting. Although Liu Ye did not truly wish to interfere in the interaction between the two siblings or cause any discord, he was compelled to engage with both to have the chance to get closer to his beloved. For this reason, instead of requesting a breakup, he sent a message to the girl expressing his eagerness to join them on the picnic. Mentally, at that moment, he admitted to himself that he would allow himself to succumb to these feelings again, to never again regret what was lost. Several months before meeting the Chu siblings, while the man was at work, a friend approached him to ask if he would join a group date that evening. Although the acquaintance insisted he needed the support of the handsome brunette, who tried every way to decline since it was already the third invitation that week, the friend persisted and provided various arguments in favor of his participation. Ultimately, Liu Ye decided to relent and soon found himself at the group date. The brunette was terribly upset that he had ended up attending. Some of the participants noticed his discomfort and attempted to inquire about it. The man managed to behave cordially and reservedly, responding with a smile even though he genuinely disliked being in that company. Unexpectedly, another participant arrived, the most beautiful of the three. As soon as Liu Ye saw her, he froze in bewilderment and intrigue, as her appearance strikingly reminded him of the protagonist from that night in the club. Of course, the mysterious beauty turned out to be Zinan. She captivated everyone with her allure, and notably resembled her brother to one person in particular. For much of the remainder of the evening, the man couldn't take his eyes off the woman who intrigued him. His friend noticed this and suggested he introduce himself instead of merely watching. The brunette did not particularly heed the advice, rather the opposite. Soon, the gathering ended and the men escorted the women to taxis. When the two friends were alone again, Liu Ye was asked why he was so captivated by the beauty who had sat opposite him throughout the date. The man candidly replied that she reminded him of someone important from his past, though she was not that person specifically. His friend was taken aback by this, but nevertheless suggested he seriously consider further interaction with the woman of interest. Without responding to his friend's latest advice, the brunette headed home. On his way, he was unexpectedly stopped by Zinan, who had been waiting for him around the corner for some time. It was then that she took the initiative to continue their conversation privately. Meanwhile, the blonde was trying to gather more information about the mysterious lover of his beloved, but found it quite challenging. Eventually, Ye learned that the woman had transferred to the man's agency on the first day they met, and that she had a twin brother who not only shared a similar name but also resembled her in appearance. Naturally, this last piece of information greatly intrigued the friend, as it sounded quite suspicious. That same evening, after the group date, the woman candidly confessed that she had been an admirer of the man for a long time. Moreover, she had followed his work, despite him having ended his primary career. Clearly, Zinan openly demonstrated her interest in him. This revelation did not surprise the brunette, as he had often heard similar sentiments from other women. However, left alone with the beauty, Liu Ye couldn't help but notice her striking resemblance to the person he cherished, and he was somewhat taken aback. During their conversation, he pondered the remarkable similarity between two distinct individuals. Meanwhile, Zinan sought to gain his favor to extend their interaction further. Because of the twins' strong physical resemblance to each other, the brunette had initially not declined her invitation. Unexpectedly, the protagonist's sister seized the moment to ask Liu Ye for permission to love him, thereby clearly expressing her feelings and intentions. Later, Zinan candidly recounted the event to her younger brother. She had no intention of hiding the fact that she had initiated the relationship. This news astonished Zinan, as he had not expected such assertiveness from his relative. Nevertheless, the brunette felt compelled to commend her efforts. Only after listening to his sister's story did the brother inquire why she had not initially told him about her infatuation with someone and had instead secretly brought him to meet the person. Moreover, the protagonist confessed that he had not anticipated such a sudden introduction to the brunette, which had caused him considerable anxiety and nervousness at the moment. Zinan found this amusing, as she mistakenly thought her relative was jealous of her young man, even though he immediately clarified that was not the case. Suddenly, the casual conversation between the twins turned more serious. The woman declared she had no secrets from him. The next moment, she decided to ask him directly if he was hiding anything from her. The elder sister was eager to know if the brunette was concealing anything from her. The protagonist hesitated upon hearing such a question and attempted to end the conversation to engage in other activities. This only aroused more suspicion in his relative, who had seemingly harbored doubts since the day Liu Ye met Zinan. It seemed the beauty had deliberately organized the picnic to confirm her suspicions, as when the young man tried to decline the invitation, his sister forbade him from doing so. She insisted that the brunette accompany her, leaving him no choice. Only when the protagonist left to change did Zinan mentally admit that each of them had their own secrets, which for the time being should not be revealed. The brother and sister arrived slightly earlier than the man. Clearly, the brunette was in high spirits, relishing the chance to spend time with the man he loved, albeit in the presence of his sister. However, the other seemed distinctly displeased with the situation, responding indifferently during their conversation. As the picnic commenced, the young group decided to enjoy themselves. Firstly, Liu Ye complimented the chosen location. The beautiful weather, park, and nearby pond made the event wonderful in his eyes. He did not hesitate to express his enjoyment. When the group was about to start their meal outdoors, the protagonist's elder sister admitted she had forgotten to buy water. This surprised everyone, but the brunette decided to go to the store himself, also providing the couple an opportunity to talk alone. Although he intended to do so, the woman unexpectedly forbade him from leaving. Instead, she announced she would go to fetch the missing picnic item herself. Before leaving the two important men in her life, Zinan asked them to get to know each other better, which surprised them both. Once alone with the man from his past, the protagonist unreservedly called him shameless for starting a relationship with his sister. The man attempted to act as if he did not hear the brunette's complaints, managing for some time to simply eat and ignore him. However, such behavior only angered the protagonist further, already upset with him over family issues. He wished Liu Ye would tell his elder sister the truth and end the unbearable connection with her. Surprisingly, the brunette refrained from any responses or comments about the situation, merely listening silently to the young man's outbursts. Eventually, Zinan could not contain himself and began shouting at the man, openly declaring his hatred for him. Only then did the man decide to respond to what he had heard. With a sorrowful smile, he asked if the harsh words were truly meant. Noticing the strange reaction from the brunette, the protagonist paused, bewildered, not expecting that his behavior could emotionally wound the other. Inopportunely, the woman returned from the store. She immediately noticed that something had transpired between the two young men. While Liu Ye lied about the conflict arising from his clumsiness during the meal, the protagonist said he was going to the restroom. This odd behavior greatly alarmed the woman, but she was unable to stop her relative. Once in the restroom, the brunette freely expressed his true emotions about the situation that had arisen between him and the man from his past. Although he had secretly hoped to meet the man for 3 years, he never expected it under these circumstances, and was now terribly disappointed. Unexpectedly, his reflections were interrupted by someone bursting into the restroom. The person tried to force his way into his stall, despite it being occupied. Such rude behavior alarmed the protagonist, who reluctantly opened the door. Naturally, it was the brunette himself, who had come for a personal conversation with his beloved. This greatly shocked the protagonist, who could never have anticipated such an action from Liu Ye. Nevertheless, the man was determined and forcibly pulled Zinan into the stall, pressed him against the wall, and locked the door. Despite the protagonist's urgent demands that the brunette release him, the latter had no intention of complying. Once the brunette realized this, he once again began to seethe with anger, loudly berating the man beside him. It was clear that he did not understand why he was being treated this way. However, in the next moment, Zinan became visibly flustered, likely imagining what might transpire between him and a past one-night stand in the confined space of a restroom stall. Suddenly, as if acting on the protagonist's impulsive fantasy, Liu Ye moved closer, completely astounding him. Only after the young man's protests about this bizarre situation did the other man confess his intention to behave like someone despised. Clearly, Zinan's words at the picnic had deeply wounded the brunette, who then decided to do everything possible to deserve such treatment. For this reason, it seemed that Liu Ye intended to kiss his beloved, but the protagonist abruptly stopped him by asking him not to touch him. Noticing the young man's gloomy expression and his confusion about the unfolding events, the brunette hugged him tightly, simultaneously admitting that they both were now accomplices in a dreadful secret. Although the brunette wanted to stop the man's advances, he could not, as he had longed to embrace his loved one for a long time. Unexpectedly, during this tactile contact, Liu Ye confessed that he had missed the young man for a long time, a revelation that deeply shocked him. This information prompted the protagonist to ponder how long the man had felt this way and why. Of course, he unconsciously wondered whether there was hope that his romantic feelings were reciprocated. Nevertheless, the young man did not feel he deserved happiness more than his older twin sister. Thus, he did not want to disrupt her relationship. Rather bluntly, Zinan reminded him of the brunette's supposed lover and asked him to return to the picnic with her as soon as possible. Before leaving, the brunette even devised a plan according to which they both needed to exit the restroom at different times to prevent the girl from suspecting anything. Despite the protagonist's efforts to preserve Zinan's romantic feelings for the man and not to reveal the truth so harshly, it was to no avail. For the beauty had been secretly standing near the men's restroom entrance for some time, and thus had overheard part of the young men's conversation. When the protagonist emerged from the restroom, he did not expect to find his sister waiting so close to the entrance. Nevertheless, she greeted him with a smile. She mentioned that she had been waiting a long time for the two important men in her life, but they had not appeared. This made the young man feel exceedingly uncomfortable, as he was concerned that Zinan might have discovered the secret he shared with the man. However, it seemed the beauty decided to pretend she knew nothing, as she continued to smile carelessly at her relative. When Liu Ye exited the restroom, he immediately decided to devote attention to his so-called beloved and suggested they go out to eat together. She appeared genuinely pleased by the invitation. Although the supposed couple behaved like true romantic partners at a date, they both invited the protagonist to join them. With evident reluctance and distaste for the situation, he agreed to accompany them, clearly because he felt he had no choice. During their walk together, the young couple strolled hand in hand, engaging in easy conversation, while Zinan was forced to follow in silence behind them. Naturally, he felt very out of place at this gathering, as if he were an unnecessary addition. Nonetheless, the brunette found himself inadvertently watching the man he loved, all the while recalling what had recently happened in the restroom stall. He was deeply embarrassed by these memories. The protagonist's elder sister covertly observed her brother's behavior, noticing how oddly he behaved, walking behind her. Meanwhile, the blonde continued his inquiries into the mysterious woman his loved one was involved with. To gather more information, he visited a private detective. Not wanting to waste his time, Ye inquired what the detective had managed to discover this time. He was clearly very serious. The detective, without any hesitation, pleased his client with photographs he had managed to obtain. They depicted Zinan with her younger twin brother. Although the photograph was taken several years ago, the resemblance between the siblings was unmistakably evident, and even the identity of Liu Ye's so-called beloved could be clearly discerned. After briefly studying the image, the blonde acknowledged the undeniable resemblance between the Kui siblings. He then heard the sad story of their family, according to which their parents had died long ago from illness. The detective revealed that the elder sister had taken on all responsibility for raising her brother and caring for his education and living expenses. Considering the information already known about the man's orientation, Ye was primarily interested in the protagonist's identity. However, the detective was unable to provide anything significant about the brunette, as he led a modest and unremarkable quiet life. After informing Ye of this, the detective hinted at the need to be paid for his work. The blonde assured him that he would receive a fair amount later. At the same time, he expressed the need to continue surveillance on the woman. Now, Ye was greatly interested in why she had changed her job from one agency to another. While the friend of the brunette decided to be more observant towards Liu Ye's so-called beloved, he suspected the identity of the protagonist in his thoughts. Late in the evening, the protagonist returned home, utterly exhausted. His elder sister noticed his fatigue and suggested he go to bed right away, aware that despite his current state, he would need to attend school the next morning. The brunette understood this but was not in a rush to fall asleep. Instead, he waited for the woman to do so. Once the apartment was quiet, Zinan engaged in his favorite pastime. He took out his phone and started listening to an audio podcast that featured stories about a voice actor. As it turned out, Liu Ye was the main guest in this episode, which was why the young man was so engrossed. Secretly, under the covers and with headphones in, the protagonist listened to the voice of the man from his past, feeling embarrassed because he still harbored romantic feelings for him. As he pondered this, the podcast episode began to discuss love, as this was the main theme the host decided to explore with his guest. Liu Ye confessed that he found romantic feelings between two people to be morally ambiguous, yet he also assured that everyone dreams of experiencing them. As Zinan continued to listen to the man's thoughts on the subject, he realized he needed to satisfy his physical needs, which he did while listening to the episode. Only after fulfilling his desire did the young man realize that his actions were wrong because they only intensified his personal romantic feelings for Liu Ye. The next morning, he arrived at his classes drained of energy and extremely dissatisfied with his chosen major, which he considered useless. Since he was not interested in art and film, the brunette did not believe that related classes would engage him, yet he had enrolled in them because of a friend. As Zinan reflected on this, his friend Shi shared important news. Their regular professor was ill, and a substitute would take over that day. Shi had found out that the temporary instructor would be a student of the former curator of their faculty, a well-known individual who had previously been an actor. Clearly, the girl was quite pleased with this change in their educational process. Moments later, the substitute teacher entered the classroom. All the students immediately began excitedly discussing the man's unique beauty and his past popularity. The protagonist, however, was horrified by the unfolding events. And all because the new, temporary faculty member was none other than Liu Ye. The young man instantly recalled details from the nighttime podcast about love, specifically the brunette's views on it. Soon after, the handsome instructor began to teach the new topic necessary for the students. He was fully focused on the task, unlike those around him. The students in the lecture seemed to pay no heed to the man, as all their attention was captivated by his striking appearance. They photographed and discussed Liu Ye. Among the crowd of so-called fans was the protagonist's best friend, who seemed thrilled, having met her idol in person. Surprisingly, the young man tried to learn despite the distractions that complicated his education. However, he struggled, as he unintentionally noted down only information related to the brunette's personality. Shortly thereafter, the mode of teaching shifted from a lecture to a demonstration, and the man turned on a spotlight to show the students elements from one of the films they were discussing. At that moment, the brunette's best friend felt a sudden pain in her stomach and informed him that she would briefly visit the restroom. The protagonist felt exceedingly awkward remaining alone in the class. The problem was not just that his beloved was the instructor, but also that he had no understanding of cinematography. As Zinan contemplated how to proceed, he noticed Liu Ye directing his attention towards him and approaching. Naturally, the young man became very nervous, though to an observer, the brunette seemed pleased to provoke such emotions in his girlfriend's brother. Startled by the unexpected situation, the protagonist closed his eyes and silently prayed that the man would not come any closer. Unfortunately, this was to no avail, as in the next moment, the brunette took the seat she had temporarily vacated. While the instructor seemed quite positive about the situation, the protagonist was not. He was profoundly uncomfortable with the personal interaction. Moreover, Liu Ye assured him that none of the other students could see them, as it was quite dark in the auditorium and everyone was engrossed in watching the film. As they discussed this, the man once again took Zinan's hand without permission, which deeply unsettled the young man, who appeared unsure how to react. Despite asking the brunette not to touch him, he did not withdraw his hand. Despite all the protagonist's objections, the instructor was unwilling to heed his request, and even assured him that the young man actually desired these advances. Faced with such presumptuous behavior, the protagonist felt a profound disappointment, as he believed his beloved could not act so selfishly and brazenly. As in the next moment, Liu Ye kissed the brunette right there in the classroom. This completely shocked Zinan, who could not have anticipated such a turn of events among the other students. Immediately after, the young man expressed his indignation to the brunette, who showed no regret for his actions. On the contrary, he was eager to behave in the same manner again. Clearly, the man enjoyed touching the protagonist and significantly embarrassing him. Shortly thereafter, he invited him on a date right after class, despite already being involved with Zinan. Naturally, the brunette immediately declined the offer, understanding that he should not interfere in his elder sister's romantic relationships. Nonetheless, the man was adamant and informed him that he would keep him after the lecture for a personal conversation, a mere pretext to spend more time alone with him. Unexpectedly, it turned out that Zinan's best friend had been observing the interaction between the two young men for some time. The girl was shocked by what she saw, as she could never have guessed that her idol would turn out to be a representative of a non-traditional orientation, flirting with an ordinary college student. That day, Zinan was at work in the agency when she was surprised by the news that her boyfriend would become a lecturer. Nevertheless, she was delighted to hear about it, and even decided to make lighthearted jokes about teaching with her partner. Initially, while genuinely happy for her beloved, learning that the brunette would be teaching her younger brother made her contemplative. She remembered the recent picnic and pondered the peculiar relationship between the two important men in her life. Outwardly, she showed her joy to Liu Ye and even asked him to look after her only relative during his studies. However, after ending the conversation, she began to reflect on their relationship. Lost in thought, she didn't notice her drink overflowing and spilling over the edge of her cup. Soon she was brought back to reality when another agency colleague inquired about her well-being, noticing that she looked extremely tired and was paying no attention to her surroundings. Despite the elder sister of the protagonist assuring that she was fine, her colleague didn't believe it. The co-worker, known for her haughty demeanor, began probing about potential problems in Zinan's relationships and family life, hoping to uncover personal information about the beauty. Despite the co-worker's obvious tactlessness, Zinan responded sternly and confidently, clearly not allowing the conversation to continue or any personal stories to be coaxed out of her. Surprisingly, even this behavior did not deter her colleague. Eventually, Zinan lost her patience and rudely snapped at her, bringing up rumors that had been circulating around the office for some time. According to these rumors, the co-worker not only had a nasty character, but was also known to be overly familiar with men. Naturally, this angered her, prompting her to leave. Later, as the elder sister of the protagonist walked through the agency, she noticed another co-worker bragging to others about her new sweater. Glancing at the item, Zinan unwittingly recalled a strange incident that occurred 3 years ago. On that day, after spending the night with Liu Ye, the protagonist returned home and immediately wanted to shower. His elder sister, however, was furious with him for not only staying out overnight without warning, but also for turning off his phone, making it impossible for her to contact him and causing her considerable worry. Although the brunette tried to explain his absence by claiming he stayed at a friend's place, his sister was understandably skeptical. Despite this, it was clear she wasn't going to get any other answer from him. So eventually, Zinan stopped arguing. Still, she wanted to know the truth, and without thinking, she peered into her younger brother's closet. There, his clothes were carelessly thrown about, initially causing her annoyance to flare. Upon closer inspection, she noticed that the clothes were unmistakably women's apparel, which shifted her anger to confusion. Moreover, a wig lay nearby, further complicating matters. Naturally, the elder sister was shocked by the discovery, never having imagined that her brother would harbor and hide such secrets from her. As she examined the clothing, her anger was mixed with distress over her sibling's unorthodox behavior. Her reflections were abruptly interrupted by her brother's shout, asking her to bring him clean clothes to the bathroom. In that moment, she had to set aside her own emotions and the peculiar secret she had stumbled upon to assist him. Now, merely glimpsing a co-worker's new sweater unexpectedly reminded her of that past incident because the garment looked eerily similar to the one she had found hidden in her brother's closet 3 years ago. When other agency employees noticed Zinan's astonished look at the blouse, they inquired about her reaction. Partially revealing the truth, she mentioned that the blouse had unexpectedly reminded her of her brother. The others were surprised by her comment, but mistakenly concluded that the siblings were simply very close and often worried about each other. As Zinan listened to their discussion, she remained internally upset, still harboring resentment towards her younger brother for the incident that occurred 3 years ago. Meanwhile, as the protagonist's lecture came to an end and the other students dispersed, he was obligated to meet with the brunette for a private conversation at the lecturer's behest, who had exploited his professional position to summon him. Although the young man approached the required office, he was extremely nervous before entering. Given what had transpired during the film viewing in the lecture hall and his own actions that night under the influence of the podcast, he felt even more awkward than usual. Unexpectedly, his internal deliberations were interrupted by his best friend, who had also stayed behind after class to speak privately with him about everything she had recently witnessed.